In today's video, I'm excited to be covering the 5 features every Salesforce admin needs in 2023. Some of the content I'll cover today may not be generally available, so don't forget to base your purchasing decisions on products and services that are currently available. My name is Christine Marshall. I'm the Courses and Community Director at Salesforce Ben, and I love to make Salesforce accessible to everyone. I'm a Salesforce MVP, a community group leader, and I currently hold 11 certifications. But that's enough about me because this session is all about you. Here's my question to you. How will you stand out as a Salesforce professional over the next year? By the end of this session, you will have a better idea about the need to stand out and how to do it. When I think of Salesforce, I think of innovation. Constant innovation keeps Salesforce ahead of the competition, helping them retain their position as the #1 CRM globally. With every release, Salesforce rolls out yet more incredible features and enhancements. As a Salesforce administrator, it's your responsibility to stay up to date on these key changes and continuously aim to review and enhance your Salesforce org. Now, all this change can feel overwhelming, and many admins are asking themselves where to focus their attention, what features and skills will be most important over the next few years, and how can they stand out among other Salesforce professionals. I predict that in 2023 and beyond, businesses will use Salesforce more than ever, and will be looking to Salesforce professionals to help them achieve a greater return on investment by optimizing their existing Salesforce setup. This is an opportunity for admins to demonstrate their overwhelming value by educating stakeholders on the features and benefits not currently in use. Now is a great time to evaluate your setup and identify areas for improvement. Many existing features have received numerous enhancements over the past 12 months, which can be used to increase your ROI. Optimizing your existing setup involves staying up to date with the latest release features and aligning your skills with future demand. An added benefit of doing this is you begin to future-proof your Salesforce career. So where do we start? I've put together my top 5 features that every Salesforce admin needs in 2023 to stay ahead of the curve and bring your admin A-game. In this session, we'll dive into Flow Builder, DevOps Center, user permissions, forecasting, and the suite of dynamic products, including dynamic forms, dynamic related lists, and dynamic actions. Let's get started. First up, Flow Builder, your one-stop automation shop. Mike Bogan of Hubble Diagnostics, a product that uncovers technical debt, risks, and opportunities within Salesforce orgs, found that only about 12% of declarative automation has been migrated to Flow. This means there is approximately 19 million hours of workflow rule migration and 5 million hours of process builder migration effort required across the entire Salesforce ecosystem. With the retirement of workflow rules and process builder well on its way, and the best practice tool for automation now being Flow Builder, there's a lot of work to be done to plan your flow strategy, migrate existing automations, and skill up on the mighty Flow Builder. It's clear that the future of automation is flow, and none of us can avoid it. The retirement of workflow rules and process builder was announced 2 years ago, and there have been huge strides in the tools available to us to support our migration. You can no longer create new workflow rules or process builder processes, so you need to create all new automation in Flow, and if you haven't already, you need to start planning your migration. Now, this isn't something to be undertaken lightly. Your migration needs to be planned carefully, and we should acknowledge that for many Salesforce admins, Flow can have quite the learning curve, so we should plan time to upskill. I would recommend a rebuild and enhance strategy when it comes to your migration. Don't just move your existing automation to Flow Builder. Now is the ideal time to evaluate your existing setup and look for improvements to avoid future technical debt. You should first analyze your current automation and document it. This will allow you to identify any redundant processes that you can remove or processes that can be combined. It's probable that you'll have lots of automation to migrate, so prioritize which processes to migrate first. Perhaps migrate object by object if that makes sense for your business. And finally, migrate and test in a sandbox. Do not do your migration in your production org. There are plenty of considerations and best practices to be aware of before you dive in. We need to plan how we're going to structure our automations carefully. Think beyond the one flow per object to find a strategy that will work for your unique business. You can order your flows using the trigger order option and use the Flow Trigger Explorer to assign priority. Really focus on optimizing your record-triggered automations so that they only fire when needed and don't exceed any system limits. You can optimize your entry conditions using values such as isChanged to ensure that an automation is only triggered when it meets your criteria. Be sure to use the debug tool to make sure that your flow is working as expected. And another useful feature is the ability to add fault paths. Fault paths let you tell the flow what to do if something goes wrong. Add descriptions, then test again, and test some more in a sandbox. Finally, you can deactivate your old automations as you rebuild them in Flow, but don't forget to create documentation that explains where the new automation can be found. Using Flow involves thinking like a programmatic developer and becoming aware of system limits and how to build efficient flows. If we look at the example on the screen, we're collecting the details of contacts and using the flow to create contact records. Now we could do this one by one. We could collect their details, first name, last name, address, and then use Flow to create a record, and that would be a DML statement. Then for the second contact, we would do the same. It's another DML statement, and you can see how this can really add up. What we could do is we could use something called a collection variable. Now this would mean that we collect all the information for all the contacts first, put them in a collection variable, and then use a single DML statement to create 5 records. And this is far more efficient. I like to put this in everyday terms that everybody can understand. So let's talk about cutlery. Let's imagine that you've ordered some cutlery from an online seller and they dispatch it to you in 12 separate packages. So on Monday, you receive a fork. On Tuesday, you receive a single spoon. On Wednesday, perhaps you receive another fork. And overall, you end up with 12 individual packets with individual items of cutlery. Now that's not efficient, not useful, definitely not a good use of those packages. Instead, it would make more sense if our seller combined all of the cutlery into a cutlery set and then sent it as a single package. And this is exactly what we're trying to do with Flow Builder. We are thinking about SQL query limits, we're thinking about DML statements, and we're finding ways to bulkify our flows. Next up, we've got DevOps Center, bringing no-code, low-code, and pro-code Salesforce professionals together. Now, DevOps is a combination of cultural philosophies, practices, and tools that aims to shorten the development lifecycle and provide continuous delivery with high software quality. Now, you'd be forgiven for assuming that DevOps is just for developers, but it's not. It really is for admins as well. And there's so much in it for you. So there are tons of DevOps benefits, including time saved from faster, more reliable deployments, fewer bugs and errors being shipped to production, better collaboration between developers and admins, a clear audit trail, and even better, version control, and improved security due to monitoring and backup. Salesforce DevOps Center has an interface that's useful to admins and developers. We are saying hello to DevOps Center and goodbye to change sets, because you can now deploy changes using a point-and-click interface. Salesforce DevOps Center has been generally available since December 2022, and it's free for all Salesforce customers, so there's no excuse not to have a go. Next, we're going to talk about user permissions and preparing for the imminent retirement of permissions on profiles. As Cheryl Feldman says, profiles will still exist, however, permissions on profiles will be end of life and permissions will be available only on permission sets. We are entering a new era of user management and permission management. And it's super exciting because the overall aim is to simplify it and give us admins a much better interface and experience when we're managing our users. So what does this look like? Well, several things will remain on a profile. That includes one-to-one relationships, things like login hours, IP ranges, any defaults, so the default record types or default apps, and page layout assignments. But plenty will be moving to permission sets. So this includes system and app permissions, create, read, update, and delete permissions, field level security, Apex classes, and visual force pages. Now these changes are coming in installments over each release, but this is one to really keep your eye on over the next year because the changes are going to come thick and fast and you'll need to stay up to date. But there are ways that you can get started right now. So first of all, you should think about documenting, consolidating, and planning your permissions migration. The first task is to work out what profiles do you have, what permission sets do you have, and what's being used by who. Next up, you can start to use custom reports, which are a new feature to again analyze what's included in a profile or who's assigned to particular permission sets. And then finally, take a look at user access policies, which make managing your users much easier. In at number 4 is forecasting, which is my favorite Salesforce feature, and in my opinion, the quickest route to increased ROI and user adoption. What is forecasting then? Well, it's the process of making predictions of future sales based on past and present data. And everybody thinks of forecasting as being all about revenue, and it's true. You can absolutely forecast on revenue, but you can also forecast on things like the volume of products that you're going to need. Forecasting impacts business critical decisions. So company outlay, defining budgets and targets, how much stock to order and build, and how to identify gaps in the sales pipeline. Forecasting is essential for our sales teams to become proactive and not reactive. Now, this is why I think you should use Salesforce for forecasting. It comes out of the box and it increases your return on investment on your Salesforce implementation because you start to actually make use of all of the tools and features that you already have. It reduces the need for spreadsheets, and Salesforce is typically where you store your real-time sales data, so it makes sense then to do your forecasting in the same environment. It's a powerful, dynamic, consolidated view. It's really easy to use both for managers and users. It gives us that single source of truth. It is flexible to the needs of any business, and it's easily customizable using clicks, not code. And if you haven't been paying attention, you may not have noticed that for the past couple of years, there have been enhancements to forecasting with every single release. So let's take a look at what's new with forecasts. First up, there's a more efficient forecast setup. So it used to be that you had to do the setup in 2 different places, but that's now been combined into a single forecast setup, which walks you through all the steps to set up your forecast, making it really, really simple to do. There's a new forecast category called Most Likely. You can view your quota attainment percentage as a progress bar, and we're going to see what that looks like in a moment. You can show the changes in the last 7 days, and that's the image that you can see on the screen now. Really lovely and visual, easy to see what's been changed, who changed it, when it was changed. You can create custom calculated columns. You can choose custom opportunity fields to include or exclude from your forecast. So forecasting can now support things like new business versus existing business, which are forecast very differently. You can customize cumulative roll-up names to suit your business, and this is going to increase adoption because your users have terminology that they're familiar with. And you can actually build custom forecast pages in the Lightning App Builder. So what does this look like? Well, this is Salesforce forecasting at the moment, and you can see that it's undergone an absolutely huge facelift, and there are more changes coming to make it even better in the next release. But it's colorful, it's intuitive, and it's really, really easy for your users to quickly and accurately forecast their future sales. Finally, let's talk about dynamic forms, lists, and actions, the future of page management, providing a responsive and intelligent experience. The premise of dynamic forms is to create user-centric, intuitive page layouts that display the right information at the right time. You can place fields anywhere on the layout without needing to add them to the traditional page layouts, and then use visibility rules to make fields and components appear and disappear based on criteria you choose. So you may base them on field values, or perhaps user permissions, role, profile, or even record types. It's worth noting that field visibility and field section visibility do behave differently, but you can do away with multiple page layouts. You can experience improved page load times, especially if you use tabs or accordion. And it's set up to allow you to create brand new pages or migrate your existing pages for ease. The dynamic forms has been in the works for a couple of years now, and when it first came out, it just supported custom objects. Then it slowly started to support standard objects, including accounts, contacts, opportunities. But from Winter 24, dynamic forms will support all standard objects that are Lightning Web Component enabled. And even more exciting, the mobile is GA from Winter 24. Let's look at an example. So I have a candidate object and I have a field, and it's called willing to travel. It's a checkbox. Now when my user is in edit mode, if they tick willing to travel, a new field will appear called distance willing to travel. And this is happening in real time. So they don't have to save to get the new field. The new field will appear while they're in the edit screen. Dynamic forms is truly amazing, and the possibilities are just endless. Next up, let's talk about dynamic related lists. So these are lists that display the most important metrics at a glance. You can create filtered related lists, choose what fields are displayed and in what order. You can customize which actions are available. Similar to dynamic forms, you can create or migrate. But don't forget to name your dynamic related list so that people know how it's filtered and what it's looking at. So if you have a list for closed won opportunities, make sure that you put that in the name. And we also have the view all option, which wasn't available when it was first released, but it is there now. And then finally, dynamic actions. So we're creating uncluttered pages that display only the actions that your users need to see based on criteria you specify. You can add and reorder actions, make them conditionally visible. We've got mobile actions, and it supports custom and standard objects. I love this feature because sometimes we have actions, maybe we have buttons on the page that are only relevant in certain situations. So perhaps we only want them to be visible to certain users, or we only want them available when some information is incomplete. For example, let's say that there's a button to request a passport scan on a record. We really only need that button if we don't have a passport scan. So once we've received that information, then we can set it so that that action no longer appears, keeping our pages really uncluttered. Keep an eye out on the roadmap for all of these features because there are enhancements coming all the time, and we have plenty to look forward to in Winter 24, Spring 24 and beyond. Let's recap. In this session, we have looked at the 5 tools that I think every admin needs to be successful in 2023 and beyond. I believe that you should focus your efforts on Flow Builder, DevOps Center, user permissions, sales forecasting, and dynamic forms, lists, and actions. And all of these features can help you improve your return on investment on Salesforce and help you future-proof your Salesforce skills. But your journey doesn't stop here. Continue your journey with these extra resources: how to transition to Salesforce Flow, get started with dynamic forms, and DevOps Center step-by-step tutorial.
Thank you for watching. We would love to get your opinion on this content, so please leave us some feedback on the comments section below. If you did like this content, give that like button a tap. And of course, if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the Salesforce Admin's YouTube channel. If you want to learn more about being a Salesforce admin in general, head on over to admin.salesforce.com. Thanks again.